Hi, friends. I'm Kim.
And I'm Teresa, and welcome to episode 3 of Holistically Curious. It's episode 3, Kim.
It is. It is. That comes after two. So, I may be terrible at math, but I definitely know that number three comes after number two.
You are not terrible at math, but in this case, you have to apply like quantum math or something because episode 3 will not be following episode 2 in podcast land.
What?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm totally confused.
For our listeners, episode 3 will be following our special bonus podcast, which we have not recorded yet.
That's right. I totally forgot. We've got a special guest coming in for an interview, and it's going to be amazing. And yes, this will be released after that. You're right. So this technically will be episode 3.2 or something.
If you're listening now, then the bonus episode was already amazing. And yeah, that lets all the pressure off of us for when we actually record it next week.
That's right, because it's already been recorded and it's already awesome.
We did amazing. Like, we did so good on that. And our guest.
Yes, fabulous. So interesting. But maybe we should always record something before we record something else that we've released. And then it'll always be fantastic. Does that, now my head hurts. I made my head hurt by that.
You made all of our heads hurt. All of our heads
Okay,
hurt.
good. We're all in it together then, so I feel better.
What I want to know, and I think all the listeners want to know, is if you've had your rock gut coffee and your candy bar today.
Ooh. Oh gosh. They will be very happy to know that I have not, and that's for a couple of reasons. Mostly because I am trying to be a little more mindful of what I am putting in my body. But also, I listened to our episode 2. And I was talking very quickly. It was a little bit fast and furious. So I apologize. I know I tend to do that anyway when I get excited, but yeah, it was a little zippy last week. So I am going to try to, slow it down a little bit.
Slow and easy. There's no race.
There is no race. I need to find a happy medium. So
Maybe not get an extra shot in your latte next time and it'll be good.
Yeah, it was that one extra shot. It did me in. It couldn't have had anything to do with the candy bar.
No. But you had so much good information on episode 2, Kim, that I think everybody was probably glad if you spoke quickly and was able to get it all in. It was really, really interesting.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. But I have a lot of info again today. I keep trying to edit it down, but there's just so much there sometimes that I'm like, no, this is cool. I got to keep this in. So I'm going to try not to speak too quickly, but still be able to let everybody know what I've got in store. So
well, there's a lot to be curious about. So there's a lot of information to give.
Yes, and I am curious about what you have been curious about this week.
Well, let me tell you, this week I've been storing my summer clothes. It's like, I live in the Northeast, so here it's already getting cold and we're looking towards our first freeze in the evening. And so I've been putting away my summer clothes and getting out the fall and winter clothes out of storage. And I'm just stunned by the sheer quantity of clothes that I own. My husband's bringing out container after container, and yet I never seem to have anything to wear. So, yeah. Here's the breakdown. I have clothes in sizes that I'll never see again. And if I do ever see those sizes again, those clothes are not going to be in style.
Right.
I have clothes for a life that I do not live. I've worked from home for the last 4 years, yet I have an entire office wardrobe in my closet, including pieces that I've bought since I began working from home. So I don't know.
Yeah, what's up with that? Why would you do that?
Why would I do that? And the very worst thing is that I love fashion, but I don't have a millimeter to spare in my closet to put anything new. So anything that I see out there that I think, oh, that would be so flattering for me and perfect for the life that I'm living right now, there's no way I could get it in my closets. It got me thinking about maybe going through and purging my closet, and I've been looking at some YouTube videos on some of the ways you decide what to keep and what to get rid of.
So it was basically time for a clear out.
In an analogy for you, when a tree in the forest is surrounded by so many other trees that it can't compete for the sunlight, it becomes stunted and unhealthy. It's the same way for people, but we surround ourselves with possessions and relationships and ideologies that don't work for us, and a host of other distractions that prevent us from growing. So today we're going to be talking about clutter.
Hallelujah!
We're going to be talking about making room in your life for newer and better. And when I say clutter, Kim, I mean all kinds of clutter. I'm talking physical, emotional, spiritual.
Preach it, girlfriend. You know how I am. I love to declutter. You don't even know. My heart just started racing. I am giddy in this moment. I cannot wait to hear all of this.
In every area of our life, if we are closed in and cut off from sunlight, we're not going to grow. So first of all, clutter can literally affect your physical and mental health. It's true. An overabundance of belongings is draining emotionally and can cause mental exhaustion, which can lead to actual physical illness. Second, just like with my clothes, being in an environment that's completely filled, it leaves no room for other things to come into your life. You can become stagnant. Human beings are walking potential, and if you take away that potentiality by not leaving room for it, you've removed an essential element of being human. We react to that by feeling mentally exhausted.
That's a profound statement.
Thank you. I thought it all myself.
Really? You thought that up? No, that's really profound. And in fact, I want you to say that again because that statement is extremely valid and it's so important. And especially I feel like in the society that most of us live in these days, that we do surround ourselves so much. So I really would like to hear that again.
I believe in a nutshell what I said was that human beings are walking potential. If you remove their potentiality from them, you don't leave room for it, then you remove an essential element of being human.
Yes, yes.
One of the things like my clothing that you should declutter is your possessions. In terms of sheer physicality, there's 2 reasons to remove clutter from your surroundings. Now, there's a book right now that's making the circuit. It's called Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, and it's by Marie Kondo. She says in her book, in essence, tidying ought to be the act of restoring balance among people, their possessions, and the house they live in. I really like that because I think balance is really what holistic living is all about. It's what we're searching in every aspect. So how do you decide what to keep and what to let go?
Well, that's the question, right?
Right. To create the most joyful surroundings for yourself, I say surround yourself with objects that give you joy. In Kondo's criteria in her book for tossing or keeping, she says, does it spark joy in you or not? Plain and simple. Pick up an object. Does it make you joyful? If not, then it should be gone. There are some possessions that you're retaining that aren't giving you joy, but that you're holding for emotional reasons. And sometimes the reason for that could be the emotions surrounding the object has not been dealt with yet. I have a lot of my grandmother's belongings, which truthfully, she's your grandmother too.
Yes, she is.
So you can attest that no one in the family wants this stuff that I hung on to.
I said, Teresa, do you want it? and you sillily, is that a word? You said, yes, I'll take it.
The things aren't bringing me happiness when I look at them. They make me feel full of stress, and they're filling all these boxes down in the basements. I have guilt that I'm not honoring them in the way that I had intended to. There's boxes full of newspaper clippings. She kept notebooks full of amusing names that she'd just find in phone books. She'd just write down the names that tickled her. She had a few notebooks with notes on cemeteries and tombstones because she loved to visit new cemeteries and look at the inscriptions on tombstones. These are things that represented to me her quirky mind, which I really loved, but they don't fit in my life physically. And they don't fit in the style of life that I lead. I have my own quirks.
Oh, yes.
So...
I can testify to that fact, that you definitely have some quirks, which is awesome.
Yeah, and they're different ones. So
They are different ones.
Yeah. So I had to realize that I wasn't properly honoring her by storing her belongings in that kind of way. I began to take them out and find homes for them, even the items that finding a home means finding a home in the trash.
Yeah, that's hard. I know that can be so difficult.
It is really hard, but Kondo has some advice for you on getting rid of things that have these emotional investments. She says decluttering is a special send-off for those things that will be departing, and that there should be a ceremony to launch them on the new journey. It's your opportunity to revisit the feelings and memories which brought these possessions into your life, and to let go of them with your gratitude for the role that they had in your past.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes, because even these items of trash have such a connection to me, or the items that should be trash have such a connection in my heart to my grandmother, that it felt wrong to let go of them, but yet it felt wrong to keep them. Having just a moment to acknowledge my feelings and to give gratitude because they sparked a memory which I found joyous, that was really helpful to me. She really believes that we should have that attitude with all of our objects, so even the ones that give us joy. She writes, when we take our clothes in our hands and fold them neatly, we are, I believe, transmitting energy, which has a positive effect on our clothes. I thought that was just lovely because I know that my items that I truly love give me joy. Clothes are definitely one of them, so that resonated. But I'd never thought of the fact that I might be transmitting some kind of positive energy to the items that I love. And it just put sort of a reciprocal spin on it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And it makes you think about how everything we do affects everything else. So, and even inanimate objects and everything we surround ourselves with.
Right. Get rid of the things that don't bring you joy in your life and keep the things that do and let them surround you. And you'll have space for more blessings to come into your life. So that's the physical surrounding.
And it makes sense, doesn't it? It's not rocket science, right?
Right.
It's common sense, but we have it's that resistance.
Yes, yes. And we can be very resistant to letting go of the past. I think we have become short-sighted as a species, and we're looking back and not necessarily always looking forwards.
Oh, yeah. Very well said.
But if you want a scientific reasoning that this would be helpful to clear your environment somewhat, is that nature abhors a vacuum. And that doesn't mean that your vacuum cleaner is a problem.
Oh.
It means that create a nice big old space in your closet and your honey will decide to take you shopping.
Oh, well, I know you like that idea. Definitely. And you can tell your husband it's scientifically proven that he needs to take you shopping.
It's quantum science theory. He'll know that that's a thing.
Yeah, he'll definitely jump on that.
Yes. So the next thing, speaking of honeys, and not yours or mine, but sometimes a seemingly great relationship just isn't right for you. And it's not always easy to identify when a personal connection isn't bringing enrichment into your life. It can be very difficult. You can hold on to people because of what they were once to you. You can also hold on to them because it just feels wrong to let a human being go. It feels like you're not being loyal to them. But sometimes a relationship is just not putting the energy into your life that you need. Could be a friendship, it could be a romantic relationship. In some severe cases, it's a family relationship. Be mindful of your relationships and just, are they bringing to you joy? Are you bringing joy to them? Or are they filling your life with negativity?
So is that the clearing out of not the physical things, but clearing out of decluttering as far as relationships?
Yes, decluttering relationships that are no longer serving you.
Gotcha. So like removing unhealthy friendships that are maybe detrimental to your mental health.
Yes, and this may very well be the very most difficult of all of the categories of clutter that we're going to address today. It's just hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier for me to get rid of those jeans that don't fit anymore than, somebody that's been in my life say a friend that I've known since high school. I do think people are brought together for a reason. But it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be together forever. It could be that there was a purpose for both of you or one or the other at a different time. But at a certain point in the relationship, maybe it's toxic. Maybe it's no longer serving either one of you, but you maintain out of habit and loyalty. And yeah, it's a lot easier to get rid of those genes than that friend.
That's true. But remember, your friends are human beings, so you don't necessarily always have to get rid of them. But you can spend a little less time, you can distance yourself, a drawing back from that relationship. And remember that sometimes relationships are cyclical. So that person may not be a good fit for your life at the time, but it could very well be that they re-enter your life at another time with more joyous, positive energy. And if you have handled the distance in the meantime in a humane way, you'll be in a good position to welcome back the new relationship.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it also doesn't mean that it's always that person is toxic. It doesn't always mean that person is negative either. It could also just mean that you two together for some reason it's healthier if you separate. So it's not necessarily that person is even, bad or good or whatever label you want to put on it. It's just that it's not working in a positive direction for you guys at the time. So I think that's very well said. It's how you handle that pulling away. And like you said, you might come back together at another point.
Kim, you're perfectly right. Labels are such BS, truthfully. And what is not right for you may be perfectly right for someone else. What's not right today may be perfectly right tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely isn't a matter of blame or good person, bad person. It just is what is healthy for you. So speaking of healthy for you, and it seems like we're doing a lot of talking on this podcast lately about nutrition and food, but there's a really good reason. We choose to live this life in a physical body, and it is for us to be good stewards of the bodies that serve us. The next thing is cleansing the clutter of your body with an emphasis on cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, I think you talked about cleansing in episode 2 as something that can be very healthy for your pineal gland.
Mm-hmm. Pineal gland. Very good, my friend. Yes, extremely good.
So I found an article on mindbodygreen.com. It's by Annalisa Kopp, and she talks about some of the benefits of doing a cleanse, and I thought this is really helpful. She recommends doing a purge once or twice a year, and she cites some of the benefits as a renewed ability to cope with stress. She says that things like alcohol, sugar, refined foods, caffeine, a lot of things that you had mentioned in episode 2 that contribute to adrenal fatigue. As we eliminate those stimulants from our diet, the adrenal glands get a much needed break and they reboot. So the abundance of nutrients from the fresh organic juices or green smoothies or whatever particular cleanse that you're following, along with deep meditative breathing, it has a nourishing and healing effect on the adrenal glands. And when they've been given a chance to rest, they're much better able to deal with everyday stress without getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's so interesting how diet always comes back. I mean, it's like it really affects everything almost that we talk about. And like you said, it's because we have incarnated on this planet and we are in a physical body. It is important to be good stewards to this body because this is going to help us travel through this life and learn the lessons we need to learn and grow spiritually. So yeah, it's so important to do these cleanses and to be mindful. And like I said, that's why I really am trying to be a little more mindful of what I'm putting in my body. We all kind of have fun now and again with our diet, but yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just kind of make it a habit to be a little more conscious.
The second benefit that she listed for cleansing, I had not heard this. She said that as your body releases toxins, it also begins to release layers of emotions. She says cleansing is about getting to those deep-rooted toxins and flushing them out of your system. And with them come toxic feelings like anxiety and anger and fear. And that gives you a chance to deal with these kind of deep-rooted pains which is such a positive thing, it's such a good thing. These kinds of negative, deep-rooted feelings can create a stagnant liver, depression, other serious illnesses. What she recommended to help deal with this emotional release during a cleanse was different kinds of yoga poses and practices that could be helpful for dealing with emotional release. I was wondering what you thought about that, if you'd had any experience with it.
Yeah, Teresa, the first thing that comes to mind is restorative yoga. And restorative yoga is really a different type of yoga than the typical yoga practice that most people think of about doing yoga poses, which you see in most videos, doing like Trikonasana triangle pose or that kind of thing, or Warrior One, Warrior Two, those kind of things. It's a type of yoga that really helps to support you. It's more of passive stretching. It's a slower practice. What happens is you put in a yoga pose and you're supported within that pose so that you can truly relax and ease into the posture, and you feel extremely supported and safe, which really is a great thing when you're dealing and processing with emotions. So, of course, child's pose comes to mind, a supported child's pose with a bolster underneath you. There's just so many practices, and I would definitely recommend people check out a restorative yoga class. Go to your local studio, but they can also find some great videos on YouTube, Amazon, that type of thing. But that just really is an excellent yoga modality to help them out.
That is really good information. She gives some other suggestions as well, such as doing deep meditative breathing, writing in a journal. The last one that she mentioned for emotional release was connecting with nature. And she says, particularly water bodies like oceans. In a nod to our sponsor, Sandy Feet Dreams, I just thought that was so amazing, because I know that when you and I go to the beach and we stay at Sandy Feet Dreams and lay out on the beach, it's just so restorative and just makes me feel so wonderful.
Yeah, it really has that nurturing, rejuvenating effect all at the same time.
Her next benefit of cleansing is a realization or epiphany. When we eat a diet that has healing properties, it lessens the burden on our body, and it makes room in our minds and our bodies for other things. So as we're purified and we're clearing out, you have room to be more clear and more focused, and ideas start flowing. And it could be the perfect time to do some deep reflective thinking, to work on a vision board. It can be moments of great clarity. That's got to be a great benefit to doing a cleanse.
Yeah, I could see that.
The next thing that she says is it can increase your vibrational frequency. Here we go back to my great love, quantum physics and the vibration of all matter. As she says, you are what you eat. So when you load up on whole, organic, enzyme-rich food with a high vibration frequency, then you become more attuned with higher vibrations. So the shorter the time from the garden or the tree or the vine to the table, the higher the energy that's connected in the food.
And who doesn't need more energy? Am I right?
Oh. Oh, so me, I don't know. Oh, wait.
No, you
I
need
do.
some more energy. I don't even try to play.
So when our bodies receive high energy from fresh, natural foods, it assimilates the energy and it spreads it throughout your body and just, again, raises your vibrational frequency. The more you connect with nature and food, the closer you are to your own nature.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing for a cleanse is deeper consciousness. So the action of cleansing and purifying the body helps to release stagnation, and it makes room for revitalized, easily flowing energy. For many centuries, many people have detoxed, or they fasted on water or juices, just in order to have that feeling, that alive, awake, aware feeling. And doing gentle detox yoga, deep breathing, walking in nature, practicing stillness, all of these contribute together and just help your body release toxic energies. I'm intrigued. I might try a cleanse. I would like to really look into some of the cleanses that are not juice or fasting, but I would like to try some of the cleanses that are full of more whole, organic foods, but more, substantial food. like fruits and vegetables in their whole state.
And I think sometimes it does help to find a nutritional coach when you are trying something like a cleanse, because it can be a very extreme change in your diet. It can be a shock to your system. And so sometimes there are certain practices that they'll ask you to do prior to a cleanse and after your cleanse. I do think it's a good idea to look into that, into looking into somebody who is a nutrition expert and that can guide you in that.
The last kind of decluttering that I want to speak about today is spirituality. Now, in all things, we're constantly evolving and moving from one state to another, even in the way that we express our spirituality. Some people, this could mean simply finding deeper and deeper meaning within their spiritual practice. But in others, it may mean learning what you can from a particular practice and moving on. Holding on to a practice that no longer resonates for you can clutter your spiritual life in a lot of the same ways that possessions clutter your physical life. If you're spending time or energy or anything that is not enhancing your life in some way, you're not allowing your spirit to grow. Moving from one practice to another doesn't mean that you have rejected the modality that you once found pleasure in. It simply means that you're enlightened enough to hold on to what resonates from past practices and embrace what feels true to you in the new practices. And Kim, you have a wonderful term for this. I think you say spiritual mutt?
Oh, yes. I was sitting there racking my brains thinking, what is she going to say?
About your wonderful term. No, you've always said, oh, I'm a spiritual mutt. And I've always found that beautiful beyond what you would think a phrase containing the word mutt could be, because you've always sort of taken the most beautiful, eloquent aspects of all the practices that you've been exposed to, taken all of the ones that resonate with you and sort of melded them into your own practice.
Exactly.
I think it's really healthy for you. And if we're meant to be spirits on a human journey, then we've got to keep in mind that all journeys involve movement. So whether it's just a deepening, a widening of your own practice, or moving on or combining practices, that we are meant to always be in a state of flux. So I hope that is some information that we can reflect on. I know my mind is boggling right now, and I could do with a quick break.
Yeah, that's great, Teresa. I am going to start in my closet, keep working on my diet, and make sure I look at my spiritual practices and make sure they're still serving me. So, great info.
Thank you. And I'll do one or two of those things, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Teresa, do you remember where we were when we first started talking about hosting a podcast?
Yes, at the beach in Gulf Shores, Alabama, right in front of our vacation rental, Sandy Feet Dreams. We're sitting on beach chairs, digging our feet in the sand, and relaxing.
That's right. For a week, we spent our days dreaming and relaxing in the sun and our evenings chilling in a great condo. The condo we rented from Sandy Feet Dreams is gorgeous.
I know, and it's so spacious.
That's right. And I was thinking that since it can sleep up to 6 adults, our next getaway should be a girls' trip, and we invite all our besties to come with us. Can you say road trip?
Oh, I can, and I'm in. If you're looking for an amazing place to spend your next vacation in the sun, visit sandyfeetdreams.com. And for a limited time, if you book on sandyfeetdreams.com, they will send you a free Sandy Feet Dreams mug to remember your stay.
Sandy Feet Dreams can be more than a dream if you book your getaway today.
So, Kim, what has captured your attention this week? What have you been looking into?
Well, let me tell you. So this has captured my attention for probably ever since I was a little kid, actually. And I just decided to kind of revisit this info. We are going to dive into the Egyptian mystery schools and Thoth. So, this is definitely just everything ancient Egypt has always fascinated me, and I love all the different theories that come out about the origins of the teachings and all of that. So we're going to kind of dive into it a little more here today.
That sounds fascinating. I also have always been interested in ancient Egypt.
Yay. So many mysteries. So let's get into this. As always, I like to kind of put my sources out there right away, and I found some really good info online again. The first was an article by Katrina Sisawaith, and it's the Thoth Hermes Trismegistus and his Ancient School of Mysteries, and that was on the ancient-origins.net. And the other was an article, Stolen Legacy, by George G.M. James, and that was at sacred-text.com. So, with the mystery schools of Egypt, they really, for more than 3,000 years, these schools have epitomized the ultimate in secret wisdom and knowledge. And just as in ancient times, there are some contemporary scholars and researchers that insist that the great teachers who presided over the Egyptian mystery schools, that they had to have come from some extraordinary place. It's been theorized that these were wise masters who survived the destruction of the lost continent of Atlantis and made their way to the early civilization of Egypt, where they helped elevate it to just a greatness far in advance of the other cultures of that era. And some have even suggested that the entity known as the god Osiris was actually an extraterrestrial astronaut from the Pleiades who first visited Egypt in prehistoric times when it was composed of barbaric tribes. Well, the proponents of this theory believe that because he came from an advanced extraterrestrial culture, he was considered a god and was the source of the knowledge within the mystery schools, and that he was responsible for raising the primitive Egyptian standard of living to the remarkable degree it was. Well, as exciting and magical as those theories are, and I totally love those theories, it's more commonly believed that the true originators of the knowledge within the Egyptian mystery schools resided in Sumeria and then emigrated to Egypt. And although it's much debated as to where those who provided the source of the knowledge within the mystery schools came from, it is universally accepted that the actual initiator or the originator of the ancient mystery schools was known as Thoth. And you can theorize for yourself whether the source of Thoth's teachings were from the gods or from his own intelligence. The knowledge imparted by the Egyptian mystery schools had a major impact on the world, and therefore throughout time, Thoth became widely known. He became known to the Greeks by his more familiar name of Hermes. And Teresa, you may have heard him called Hermes Thoth, which is actually a generic name that designates a man, a caste, and a god at the same time. As a man, Hermes Thoth is the originator of a powerful system of magic and its first initiator. As a caste, he represents the priesthood, the repository of ancient wisdom, and as a god, Hermes becomes Mercury for the Greeks, the god who delivers messages to the mortals from the Olympiad, and the god who initiates mortals into transcendent mysteries. Later on, the Greek disciples of this secret tradition would actually call him Hermes Trismegistus, and that means 3 times great. And he would be credited for originating the material contained in numerous books on esoteric science. Thoth was known to the Sumerians as Ninjazida. It is theorized that he may have been Enoch to the Jews, Odin to the Scandinavians, Wotan to the Teutons, and some even controversially suggest Buddha. It's like he's known all over the world by all these different names. So that was the reach, that just tells you this was before the internet, people. So
There's so many things that all seem to, even though they're different names in different countries, they all seem to have the same origination. There is something so ancient and so
Exactly.
forgotten.
Yeah, and that's the stuff I dig, and I definitely feel that way myself.
Yes, even ever since we were small girls, I think, and our parents were reading Chariots of the Gods.
Yes, yes, which is one of my favorites of all time. So definitely check that out, friends, if you haven't read that. Whether you buy into his ideas about ancient aliens or not, it's totally an awesome read. It's super fun and interesting. So whether you read it in the aspect that you believe that's a possibility or just for the fun of it, check it out.
Yes.
So on to Thoth, our friend. Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, he's portrayed by the Egyptians as the moon god, and his depictions always show him with the body of a man, the head of an ibis, or an ibis. I'm not sure exactly how to say that. I should have looked it up. And a crescent moon over his head. His symbol was the winged serpent staff, and he was considered the god of wisdom, letters, and time. But before he was revered as a god, Teresa, he was revered as the first great Egyptian philosopher. Receiving his wisdom while in a meditative trance, he wrote over 40 books, including, allegedly, the Emerald Tablet, the Book of Thoth, and the Divine Pymander. With the Book of Thoth, that was only given to his enlightened initiates within the mystery school. It held a lot of secret information that was not commonly known.
Are any of the books that he wrote in existence in any form?
Well, you can find the Emerald Tablet. You can find that even on Amazon, but it's not the actual book. So basically what it is, there are books out there called the Emerald Tablet, but they're just books that have been channeled. So it's a book that it was channeled through somebody in modern times, supposedly from Thoth through this individual, and that individual wrote it down. So there's no ancient copies left of these works that I know of. Now, I definitely am not an expert, so that's my understanding.
Until they find the next scroll or carved tablet in a cave.
Yes, that's exactly right. And or in the middle of the Sphinx or, the pyramids, what some people theorize as well. So, yeah. In fact, that's one thing they talk about, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, that there's a lot of uncertainty about his works, but the range of topics that Thoth covered is really staggering to the brain. It really boggles my mind. He covered everything from medicine, chemistry, law, art, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, one of my favorites, anatomy, and oratory skills. So it was just vast. To the Egyptians, his knowledge was so incredibly vast and all-encompassing that at first they just began to credit him as the communicator with the gods and the keeper of the records. But eventually they inducted him into the Egyptian pantheon. He became a god, essentially. And nothing is actually for certain about a lot of his works, especially the Book of Thoth, other than the fact that it was written in Egyptian hieroglyphs. They do have records from other sources that the Book of Thoth was written in hieroglyphs, that it was also kept in a golden box in the sanctuary of the temple, and only the highest initiate of the Hermetic Arcanum Mystery School had the key to it. And it's said that this book described the key to immortality, basically the process achieved through awakening certain areas of the brain, similar to the Buddhist monks' practices. And it's claimed that the awakening of the brain was achieved through meditation, the use of a white powder as well, and the priestess's sacred essence. And we don't know what that is. We don't know what the white powder would be or the sacred essence. I'm sure there's a lot of theories out there, but none are conclusive. They also say that within his writings, there are even many similarities with Buddhism and Christianity, particularly his teachings on reincarnation and the creation of the world. In the time of Ramses, around 1300 BCE, or before the Common Era, Egypt shone as just such a beacon of light of civilization throughout the world. Seekers would come and seek out the divine sciences from everywhere gosh, from every shore, Asia Minor, Greece. They all wanted to study in the sanctuaries with the Magi. And they really believed that these mystery schools could give them the secrets of immortality.
I really can't even blame them for traveling from afar, because when you mentioned the privileged ones that would have a key to read the book that's held within the gold box, it made me so covetous. I was like Gollum with the gold ring. I was like, my precious.
Right? I know. I was sitting there even thinking earlier today, if I could have just been, I mean, I wouldn't even have to be one of the seekers, one of these initiates that was there. If I could have just been a fly on the wall in one of these temples, that would have been enough for me. That I could have just observed and listened without being one of these special people that got to actually be there. I just can't even fathom it. It's beyond my comprehension. Imagine how amazing that would be.
It would be incredible. I think it would be incredible to us at this stage of our evolution or our intellect, maybe. I can't imagine what it would have been like at that time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think, one thing that's interesting about these students, they knew it wasn't going to be fun and games. They knew very well that the initiates of the mystery schools were going to have to undertake the rigors of disciplined study, which would involve training the body, mind, and the spirits. There was a lot involved. They knew that in order to attain the mastery demanded by the priests of the mystery schools, the newcomers would actually undergo a complete restructuring of their physical, moral, and spiritual being. According to the credo of the mysteries, only by developing one's faculties of will, intuition, and reason to an absolutely extraordinary degree could one ever gain access to the hidden forces in the universe. And it was only through complete mastery of body, mind, and spirit that one could see beyond death and perceive the pathways to be taken in the afterlife. Only when they had conquered fate and acquired divine freedom could the initiate actually become a seer, a magician, an initiator. So they knew they were looking at some incredible work on themselves.
They had a pineal gland the size of a frickin' basketball.
They did. You are so right, my friend. They did. Either that or, I don't know, a giant boulder. In fact, they needed something to hold their head up. Their pineal gland was so large.
There was no fluoride in that water.
There was no fluoride. Just think, if we had no fluoride, we'd be so different right now. I love it. Moving on. Now I have this vision of all these ancient, people going into these temples with these gigantor heads. They were just trying to match all their alien teachers. So they
ooh, there you go. Oh my gosh.
Okay. It's thought that the earliest theory of salvation is actually an Egyptian theory, that the Egyptian mystery system had as its most important object the deification of man, and taught that the soul of man, if liberated from its bodily fetters, could enable him to become godlike. And when they did this, they would be able to see the gods in this life and attain basically the beautiful vision of being able to see gods within this physical life and hold communion with the immortals within this physical life. So I find that fascinating.
Oh, I do too.
Basically, they're talking about having that sixth sense.
Yes, and it feels like a combination of many different religions.
Yes, I agree.
Just fascinating.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So one of the great philosophers defines this experience as the liberation of the mind from its finite consciousness, basically when it becomes one and is identified with the infinite. So it's just having that expanded view and that expanded enlightenment to be able to see beyond our physical realms. This liberation was not only freedom of the soul from bodily impediments, but also from the wheel of reincarnation or rebirth. It involved a process of disciplines or purification both for the body and the soul. Since the mystery system offered the salvation of the soul, it also placed great emphasis upon its immortality. So basically, it's telling everybody that your soul is going to live on. You're more than your physical body.
There's this recurrence in everything that we're learning about cleansing and purifying and doing the right things with your body in conjunction with the spirit. There was so much already in what you've said that the learners knew that they had to be, fit in all ways.
I think, yeah, that's a great point. And I think a lot of it, and it goes to the whole quantum thing of our vibration. And I think because we are a spiritual being within a physical form, we're trying to see things spiritually, but we're in the fetters of this physical meat puppet, as I like to say, this body. And we have to find ways to make this vehicle more receptive and able to communicate and be enlightened with things that are beyond our normal awareness. And so I think that we have to we have to honor and take care of this physical body. And like you said, it all boils down to purification and what you put within your body and taking care of it so it can serve us better. So yeah, a great, great point. I found this very interesting when it talks about, because this is a school, right? So, when I think of school, I think of structure, okay? So I found this little section that I read extremely interesting about that within the mystery schools, there were actually 3 grades of students. So the first were called the mortals. The mortals were probationary students who were being instructed but who'd not yet experienced the quote unquote inner vision. So they hadn't come to that point where they could see beyond just the normal, what physically we see. The second was the intelligences. They were called the intelligences. And those were the ones who had attained the inner vision, and they'd also received an intuitive mind. And the last grade were called the creators, or the sons of light. And those were the ones who had become identified with or united with the light. So, in other words, they had achieved true spiritual consciousness or enlightenment. And for years and years, the initiates underwent, oh my goodness, disciplinary intellectual exercises, bodily asceticism. They had intervals of tests and ordeals to determine their fitness, their ability to, whether they were fit to proceed on to more serious, solemn processes of the initiation. So it was a constant evolution for them through these schools. And it would take years and years and years, decades, they'd be in these schools. Their education consisted not only in the cultivation of the 10 virtues, which were made a condition to eternal happiness, they said, but also of the 7 liberal arts, which were intended to liberate the soul. There was also admission to something called the greater mysteries, where an esoteric philosophy was taught to those who had demonstrated their proficiency. So they'd get to a certain point and then they could learn this esoteric philosophy. That included the grammar, rhetoric, logic. These were all disciplines of moral nature, which would help get rid of the irrational tendencies of a human being. It would help purge these tendencies. And then the initiate was trained to become a living witness of the divine wisdom. So they had to purge all that part of being that human being, basically, and then they could open up to being a witness to the divine wisdom. The geometry and arithmetic, those were considered sciences of transcendental space and numeration. And that comprehension really provided the key not only to the problems of one's beings, but also to those physical problems, just the actual, like you would think of like quantum problems today. So they would look at the actual arithmetic and the geometry, and they would look at things that you would almost consider like we look at the quantum problems that have people baffled.
Wow, so advanced.
So advanced. They dealt with astronomy. That was basically the knowledge and distribution of those latent forces in man. They considered that affected the destiny of individuals. So it was almost like an amalgamation of astronomy and astrology, how it affected people, places, nations, that kind of thing. Music was a huge part of the mystery schools. Music or They would also call it harmony. So it was the living practice of philosophy. For example, the adjustment of human life into harmony. So it was the practice of helping human life to become harmonious with God. Basically, you're looking at the vibration is because harmony is vibration, music is vibration. So it's bringing that physical form into harmony with the vibration of God. That practice basically was to help that personal soul become identified with God. They used the music therapeutically, and it was used by the Egyptian priests to help cure diseases. It was a very important part.
Oh my gosh, sound and vibration to cure diseases.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. It's something that I feel like we're waking up to it once again. I feel like it's coming back around where people are recognizing the importance of it. Once again, I have a dear friend that is an amazing practitioner in this modality. And it's so valuable. And it really is based on the whole thing that we're just vibration. Everything is vibration. Yeah, I could go on and on about that, but that would be another hour. So let's continue on with the mystery schools. Let's see here. The Egyptian school's theory of salvation is just fascinating. Basically, they try to train the individual to become godlike while on earth. And at the same time, qualified for everlasting happiness. So what it means is they train them to become godlike while they're on the earth, but also ready when they move on to the other realms. They believe that this was accomplished through the efforts of the individual. So it was through that individual's cultivation of arts and sciences on the one hand, and their life of virtue on the other. So it's their knowledge, their wisdom, their education, but also how they live their life. If they live in a harmonious, loving, good way, which I think is amazing back then. It wasn't like there was a mediator. There was no mediator between man and his salvation. Every person had their own control, whether they were saved, quote unquote, you know? I think that was very enlightened for back in those times, because you think of all the times since then, how we moved on, if they felt that way back then, 5,000 years ago or whatever. And then we moved on to the point where we had things like the Crusades. So we moved on to things like the Crusades and all of that, where it was like you had to have the priest had to be there to give you your salvation. You had to have that mediator. So it's just very interesting to me that was their beliefs back then. Oh, another interesting aspect, and we're ending up here pretty quick, but the Egyptian mystery schools, for centuries, the pharaohs themselves were the pupils. And the pupils, these pharaohs, they received their initiation name from the temple, and the priests were honored with the roles of counselors and advisors to these pharaohs. So some people refer to the rule of ancient Egypt as the government of the initiates. So all of these pharaohs they were students. Really, everything they did was based off the information from the priests. It can't be denied that the mystery schools produced a number of remarkable theories. They dealt with essential questions about the true nature of humankind, the nature of our relationship with the cosmos. They created theological constructs and really formulated esoteric answers that brought initiates and aspirants to all the great religious cities in Egypt, the Heliopolis, Memphis, Hermopolis, Abydos, and Thebes, just all over. Eventually, the mystery schools went into decline, especially as new dynasties started emerging. And the initiates, they left Egypt, and they ended up bringing the Book of Thoth to another land. Right now, nobody knows where the Book of Thoth is. Supposedly, the chain of succession of a Grand Master ever since Thoth has been unbroken. And they say that the Rosicrucians are actually descended from Thoth's mystery schools.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. And you might be wondering, what about Thoth?
What about Thoth?
Well, as for Thoth, he has remained revered by philosophers, occultists, alchemists, and healers throughout the ages. And though many of the texts credited to him were lost in the Great Fire of the Library of Alexandria, I can only wonder how different history might have been had that knowledge that was contained in that library not been lost. You sit there and think, what if we had not lost that wisdom, that knowledge, and we had had that for the last 5,000 years? How things could have been different. Maybe there was a reason that the world needed to proceed the way it did, and
everything is cyclical, including great knowledge. And I think that regardless, we would be right around where we are right now, because this is the time for us to be exactly as we are.
yes.
It makes me so jealous of these people living in this time of great learning. It also makes me wonder if we could be entering such a time ourselves, because there's a lot of holistically curious people out there.
There are a lot of holistically curious people. And it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking that as well, that we are actually very blessed that there's so much knowledge and so much coming out. So many great teachers out there right now. And I think a lot of it is just being open to hearing it and learning it. So that's a good point.
And speaking of hearing it and learning it, we have to say we really appreciate our listeners hanging out with us. And we hope that they'll help us reach other listeners by subscribing to our podcast, Holistically Curious, on iTunes. They can leave us a review and a rating, because it makes our podcast more visible to other people.
And we'll love them so much for doing it.
We'd be so thankful.
We'd be so thankful.
And Kim, how can they contact us?
They can email us at holisticallycurious@gmail.com, or definitely find us on any of the social platforms that you may be on. You know, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Shoot us a message. Let us know what you're holistically curious about. We want to hear it. We want to be able to cover the topics that you're really interested in. So shoot us a quick message and we'll get on it.
Kim, any last words of wisdom for us?
I definitely have some last words of wisdom. Stay curious, my friends.